Alright, y'all, so today I'm talking about my specific way of doing skepticism because, yes, skepticism sounds like, okay, like everybody knows what that is, but I'm assuming different people perceive it differently, right? And me being a spiritual person, my skepticism, you know, works within this spiritual field, right? I assume that a lot of, so for atheists, right, there are atheists that are skeptics, but they are, you don't like, okay, so, and there are atheists that are not skeptics, but I feel that atheists that are skeptics believe that you can be an atheist that's not a skeptic, but you can't be a skeptic that's not an atheist. And that's simply not true. So I think their understanding, if I try to steelman it, is that if you were truly a skeptic, then you would question your spiritual beliefs and you would obviously arrive at the fact that all spiritual things are false. And it just can't be proven. So even if it was true, there's no reason to believe in it because there's nothing to show you that it's real. And I said that like I was pompous because I'm making fun of you. But don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. I'm just being a dick. Come on. Okay. Um, the thing is this: when you're an atheist and you're a skeptic and you hand wave away spiritual possibilities, usually you do this based off of assumptions, and you um, make it make sense within your brain because you say, well, it's an educated guess, like obviously, right? And all right, so let's play around with a few little things here. And hey, if you want to challenge me on these things, I'm more than willing to. I don't really have the ability to do like YouTube videos with other people and stuff. I don't really know how to do that. I'm pretty new to this, but I can answer to your comments if you feel like doing that. But here's the thing. So, for instance, uh, when I look at the afterlife, what do I actually know? Based off of everything I've heard, we have the possibility that you stop existing. There's nothing else, nothing at all. You just go blank. Then we have the possibility of heaven, but there's many different religions. So if there is a heaven, there's a chance that there's many heavens, or one of the many heavens is the real one. And then that would be the same for hell. So there would be a hell, and maybe there's many different hells, and maybe there's one hell that's true and the other ones are false. And then we have these randoms because, like in the Norse pagan, um, the underworld is not hell like the Christian. It's more like just a place where you go, and they have different places. Like if you drown, you go to a specific place that's actually pretty nice. If you just die normally, you go to this place that's kind of boring. If you die in battle, you go to Valhalla and you get to feast all like feast and then war, feast and then war, feast and then war, right? I guess that's what they like, right? So, and then we have all of these other things, right? And then we have reincarnation, and I assume that there's many different types of reincarnation because, okay, do you automatically get reincarnated as a person, or maybe there's the type of reincarnation where you might be reincarnated as an animal, and some people would say there's a possibility that you can choose to be reincarnated as an animal because you want to have that experience. Some people say you get reincarnated as an animal because it's a living thing. Other people would say you get reincarnated as an animal as a punishment, and you have to like atone to be brought back to being a human. So we have all these different types of reincarnation, right? And then I would say that all of these scenarios are equally possible because I have no clue what happens, right? And I believe that that's the true skeptic answer because I actually don't know. There's no way for me to find out. I've had spiritual experiences, including disappearing, because through meditation, there is a state where you forget you exist. Like you're not aware of yourself. You're just gone. Everything is blank. And it feels like a second passed by, and you wake up and notice it's been 3, 4 hours, and you went really deep into the meditation, right? So I've experienced many spiritual things, including not existing, not truly not existing, but mentally, right? Um, but none of this is dying, right? So I can't say that any of this tells me what happens after I die, because that's a different experience, right? That's a different thing. Like this is something that I achieved through meditation, not through dying, right? Now, some atheists would say, okay, well, where were you before you were born? And they think this is like a gotcha because it's like, oh, I don't know. Oh, so then you didn't exist. And they don't realize that not existing during that time and not remembering anything from that time is identical. If you have no memory of it, it doesn't exist practically according to our perception. So whether you existed or just don't remember, like you can't tell the difference between the two. So how can you possibly say one is real and the other one's not, or that any of them is more or less possible than the other? And and it's like, hold up, do you remember anything from when you were in your mother's womb or when you were 6 months old? Do you remember anything from this time? And it's like, no. Okay, so if you had no experience during this time, that means you didn't exist. And the obvious answer is here is like, hold up, but my mother knows that I was in her belly and she told me. Okay, so you're going off of somebody else's experience. So you don't actually know. You're just trusting somebody else, right? Well, why would she lie? Well, we don't know. What if she told you that you were in her belly, and because of this, you believe that you definitely was in a belly, but you're actually adopted, and you were not in her belly. She actually received you when you was already 8 months old, right? So we don't actually know where you came from. It's like, oh wait, but then obviously I came from another mother. We just don't know who she is. But here, more assumptions, right? So it's like in a hypothetical, because I don't think artificial wombs exist yet. But we never know. Maybe there's some mad scientist somewhere, cloning people or something. I don't fucking know. But reality is like not reality, but like in a hypothetical, it could be that your mother was told you were, this is an adoption process and here's your baby and she goes home with you, but you were actually created in an artificial womb. You're like a test tube baby, and you actually was never in a room, a person's belly at all. And it's like, yeah, now we're getting into territory where we can say that's probably not likely. But as a thought experiment, how do you know? To say that you definitely existed during this time is not something that you can actually say without assuming or trusting someone else's word, right? So yeah. So yeah. So pretty much. Now, this is just the afterlife thing, right? Now, personally, when it comes to the afterlife, I like to just hedge my bets, right? Personally, I think that I've experienced enough. I most likely want to stop existing, which you think is guaranteed, but we don't actually know that. Personally, I think that according to certain spiritual beliefs, this is like um, Maya, the illusion, right? So this existence is an illusion, and if you become enlightened, you exit the cycle of reincarnation and you leave. Um, Now, the thing is this: how do you know that if you end up in some sort of heaven or hell or some other existence, that's just another form of reincarnation, right? So I'm kind of under the belief that maybe heaven and hell and other existences are just part of Maya. There's just another reincarnation thing. So the actual exit, the actual nirvana, the actual true bliss is to not exist, is to exit completely and stop existing. Because in a state of non-existence, there's no pleasure to seek or suffering to run from, right? So if you don't, if you no longer have an ego and you no longer, suffering or running from suffering or trying to mitigate suffering, or desiring pleasure, desiring joy, desiring bliss, desiring all these things and running towards it and trying to obtain it and trying to hold it and trying to keep it, when all of this disappears and there's just nothing, that's true bliss. There's no ups, no downs, no middles, there's nothing. You just silent. No sight, no hearing, no chatter in the mind, nothing. So I think that would be the true nirvana. But I'm not 100% that that's guaranteed, right? Atheists think that it's guaranteed that that's what they're going to get. And maybe it is, because according to Krishna, you go to where you believe you're going to go, right? So, according to him, if you worship a god or a demon or an angel, you go to that thing. So maybe you go nowhere because that's where you think you're going to go. I assume you don't have to worship it. Like maybe you just go there because that's what you believe. And honestly, I think that would be the optimal thing. But we don't know. That's what it really comes down to for me. Like from a spiritual perspective, when I'm being skeptical, the only true answer is that I don't know, and that's pretty much it. Like even in all other aspects, I can never tell you anything about knowing anything. I can tell you what I believe, and I can tell you the reasons I believe it, but I can't tell you whether I know it or not. Um, yeah. Let's take a second here. And when it comes to other spiritual things, I made this little analogy, and it kind of sucks because there's an obvious problem with it if a person's being too critical. But if you understand the meaning, it makes sense. You see, when it comes to other spiritual things, it seems like someone says, I believe in a spiritual thing, and then somebody would say, well, prove it. And then it's like, all right, well, this is my experience, and this is the reason I believe it. And then they say, well, that's not evidence. Okay, well, this thing happened, and that was really real, and oh, but that's not valid. And it's like, well, what kind of evidence do you want? And it's like, all right, use science. I want to measure it and weigh it and blah, 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 blah. And I feel that sometimes this can be disingenuous because if you truly believe in science, then you understand that science only applies to certain things, right? It can like you can only use science on like physical things and systems and um, reactions, and you can say what a thing is and what it does and how it reacts or responds to other things. Even if it's not necessarily visible or tangible per se, but it still has to be a physical thing in a sense. I'm not sure if I would consider energy a physical thing, but it's still something that we can measure to some extent. We can know things about it. We can say this is it and this is what it does and this is how we can measure it and blah 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 blah, right? But you can't use science to prove or disprove a moral claim or a spiritual like a moral claim or an ethical claim or meta ethics or a philosophical position or a way of life. Like you can't use science to prove stoicism, right? Like you can't say, well, science says stoicism is the best thing or the worst thing. Like it doesn't. Science doesn't do that, right? That's why we have other fields. If we didn't have, then it would just be science, right? But like like there's a difference between science and mathematics, and you use mathematics in science, but they're still different things, right? Like you can use science in engineering, but they're still separate things, right? Um, you know, and then when we get into other things, like you can technically you can use science in a sense when it comes to arts, right? But they're still different things. Like for instance, I'm not sure about this one because like when it comes to music, right? I might be able to use some sort of science to say these notes sound best together, and these notes collide so they don't sound good together, etc., etc. But when you string together a certain types of notes, and it invokes a specific feeling in a person, maybe we can explain that with science, but I haven't seen a scientific explanation for that. You know, I do think that we can explain a lot with science. And if you're wondering, I don't make the science fit my spirituality. I try to make my spirituality fit the science. But there's still spiritual things that I can't explain with science, but I've had enough experiences to say, hey, this feels real enough for me to believe it, right? And what it comes down to for me is, does it provide me something beneficial? Like, does it accomplish the goal that I have? Like, if there's a spiritual thing and I like it for a certain reason, like, is it doing what I want it to do, right? Um, and it could be simple as providing depth, right? Because like for instance, Hindus. There are Hindus that are practicing Hindus, but they're atheists, and the images of their gods are just iconography. I can't say that word correctly, but it's not like, oh, this is literal. It's just this image has symbolism, the esoteric symbolism, and it's teaching you something. Like for instance, the image of Kali, right? The image of Kali, she's standing on Shiva, and Shiva, it represents consciousness, and Kali represents Shakti, and Shakti is energy. So in this image, this one aspect of the image, for some Hindus, means that energy. Uh, um, how do I say this? I'm trying to say before. Well, like in the image, it's like saying energy is above consciousness, but not predates, but is more fundamental in a sense, right? Like saying consciousness is fundamental when it comes to mind. You can't have a mind without being conscious, but you can't be conscious without the underlying energy that allows that thing to be what it is, right? So, like, that's something that is taught within that image, right? And you don't need to be a spiritual person to understand that teaching. And it doesn't mean that it's absolutely true. We might find something out where consciousness has no energy or something like that. I don't know. But this is what that teaches, right? So spiritual teachings do have value to some extent. Like most of Hinduism is just philosophy. It's like dualism, non-dualism. Like there's different ethical claims. Like if you go into something like the Angari, their ethical understanding is very different. I think they like I don't know how to explain it without being offensive or anything, and I'm not against what they are or whatever, but like they're to the point where it's like nothing matters. Like they'll drink their own piss and eat the bodies of their like dead followers or whatever. Like you're not allowed to unalive like to oh my god, TikTok language. You're not allowed to kill anybody in order to eat them, but if your follower dies, a lot of Hindus do like cremation. I assume others do burials, but they just eat them, right? So it's like there's giant leaps between these different types of spiritual things, and I'm not saying this is good. I'm just saying within Hinduism you have that all the way to like you need to be a saint, and you can't even look at a woman, blah blah blah, like stuff like that. So this is not something where you're gonna go in and practice the whole thing. Like this is just a ridiculous amount of different philosophies, and that's why I like it. There's a lot of philosophy. I like philosophy. But yeah, I'm trying to think of something else. Um, Actually, I can pause and come back when I have something. Okay, so I thought of something. So, for instance, like I believe in magic because I practice it and it seems to give me what I want, right? And I understand that a lot of skeptical atheists would be like, "Hey, like that shit is fake," but this is my reasoning around it, right? It's not really a reasoning like this is why I believe it. It's just this is why I am still skeptical even though I use it. Um, so, for instance, if you're trying to understand something and you run an experiment and a specific response comes out, right? Like this is the thing that happened, and you repeat the experiment and it happens again, and then repeat the experiment and it happens again, and then repeat the experiment, it happens again. At a certain point, you have to say there's a pattern here, right? So when you use magic and the same thing happens, like you used a specific type of magic to achieve a specific type of goal, and it worked, and then you used it again and it worked again, and then you used it again and it worked again, and you used it again and it worked again. Like, how many times does it have to work before you say, hey, there's a pattern here, maybe there's something to this? I'm not saying that it's absolutely true, I'm just saying that there's something to it, right? And then there's this other thing. Well, let's say it didn't work. Let's say it worked 10 times and then one time it just didn't work. And now, sometimes atheists would say, well, you're counting the hits and ignoring the misses. Um, but I start feeling like, but you're doing the opposite thing. You're ignoring the hits and counting the misses, right? And it leads me to these other thoughts like, hold up. If I use magic and most of the time it gives me what I want, and when it fails, it's revealed to me why it failed, and then I do the correct things that I need to do to fix it, and then do it again, and then it works. Apparently the times that it missed, the times that it failed, is invalidating the whole process. But if you have a goal in mind, and you use a perfectly natural and physical way to achieve that goal, and you succeed 10 times and fail 5 times, why is it that the 5 times you failed doesn't invalidate your method, right? So, like, sometimes this doesn't make sense to me. Like sometimes, like there's a thing that you're doing, and there's a thing that I'm doing that are actually very similar when you look at it on a deeper level, but for some reason mine's unvalidated and yours continues being validated, and it doesn't make sense. Like something that I don't understand, because I know there's a lot of atheists that are actual scientists and they know what they're talking about and they know a lot more than me, but there's also a lot of atheists that aren't. And then what ends up happening is I say, well, I believe this thing, and they're like, that's wrong. And it's like, well, why? Well, because science says this. And it's like, okay, explain that science to me. I don't know, you have to talk to a scientist. So hold up, so you're telling me you don't actually know how this works, you're just going off of what some other guy did. Yeah, well, I also read it in this book. Doesn't that kind of sound familiar? like, like if you're going to use science to debunk everything, at least go to school and actually know the science. Like how are you going to criticize a Christian that says it's real because of my book or it's real because my pastor said it, when you're literally doing the same thing? You're saying it's real because the scientist said it or because it's in the science book, right? And I'm not saying it's wrong. It probably is true, but you're still doing the same thing, right? It's hypocrisy. Um, like if you're going to bring forth a scientific claim and say this proves something wrong, you have to be able to explain that claim. If you can't explain it, then you don't know it. So then you're just going off of a book or what some dude said, right? And what if you happen to read this in a book that's outdated and they the scientific claim has changed by now, So like yeah, you know. So yeah. All right, let me come back in a little bit. Okay, I guess this is not really an argument. It's more like a little anecdote, like a little personal story. Like for instance, I was talking to somebody, and I was mentioning the magic and blah blah blah, right? And they asked something along the lines like, was there ever a time where it wasn't necessarily working or anything? And I'm like, yeah, but the times that this happened, it was because I wasn't using it, right? There was a little portion of time where I wasn't really using it, and things were getting a little hectic and weird. Um, and eventually I was like, hey, like, all right, I should just do the thing and see if it works for me. And I did it, and things started getting a little bit better, right? And they was like, I don't believe that. And I was like, what do you mean? This is this is like something that happened to me. What do you mean you don't believe? Like, why would I lie about like something that I lived through, right? Like it doesn't make sense. Like I'm not even accusing anybody or like saying something tremendously crazy or anything. Like this is not that big of a claim here. Like all I'm saying is that there was a portion of my time where I stopped using it for a little bit and I was like preoccupied with other things, and this person's like, hey, like if you know magic and you know that it works and you can do all these things, why would there ever be a time that you don't use it to, do things and to change your situation and blah blah blah. And I'm like, hold up, you're telling me that there's never been a person that has a problem, knows how to fix it, and doesn't fix it. Like you're telling me that nobody has ever procrastinated or come up with excuses to not do the thing they need to do. Like nobody has ever said, "Oh, hold up, I have to work, and when I come out, it's too late. I'm tired. I'm gonna just go to sleep." And then the next day, no, it's too early. I'm gonna sleep in and then go to work right after. Blah blah blah. And it's like, oh wait, no, but I have to be with the family at this time, and this day I'm gonna spend time with this friend, and I got to do here and there and blah blah blah. And then eventually you have enough time. You're like, I have enough time, but I don't want to. I'm gonna just watch a couple of episodes of freaking Young Sheldon or something. Like I'm gonna just watch some like reruns of Friends or something. Like you're telling me this hasn't ever happened. It's like, yeah, it has. Well, why do you think it's different for someone using magic? Like you're really telling me that once you know magic, like this is your entire life forever, and there's never gonna be a time where you just don't feel it and stop using it, right? And yeah, and I thought that was just like a funny little story. I mean, I'm trying to do a specific thing with this video, but I guess I'll go into it. How do I even? You see, when it comes to like procrastination and stuff, with magic, because magic is kind of weird. You see, there's a few things that happen with magic. Because even if you're not skeptical, sometimes things work in a way that leaves you so astonished that it's spooky. Even if you believe in the spooky stuff, that doesn't mean you won't get spooked out, right? And at a certain point, sometimes you're using it in a way, and you start realizing that in order for the thing that you want to happen, like to happen, other people were involved. Like people behaved in certain ways that made your thing come true, right? And you start what I call you start getting this thing what I call guilty puppeteer syndrome, right? And I like call it this because it starts to feel like, wait, hold up, like, am I like manipulating the people around me with this stuff? Like, that's not my intention. Like, I just want the thing, but I don't want to like force people to do stuff, right? And like I'm not even understanding fully like if they do these things and it makes my thing come true, like how does that affect them, right? And it starts to get really weird, right? And sometimes it's like, all right, I don't want that to happen, so you start slowing down and not doing things, and then you start have like you start have like because you're already in this magical mindset, you start having basic thoughts where it's like, well, actually this is what I want to happen, and it happens anyway, even though you didn't do ritual, you didn't do anything. It's like I wanted it to happen and it happened, and these people were involved, and apparently everybody behaved exactly the way they needed to make my thing come true. And that stuff gets super spooky and scary because it leads to other things that I'm not sure if I should mention, but like you can imagine where if you have a thought and then it comes true within a couple of days, and when like that can get really freaky and dark pretty quick. So yeah, so that's like my little explanation for why sometimes people that do this stuff will be like, you know what, I have to step away for a little bit, clear my mind, and try to like not want things for a little bit because this is getting a little too spooky, right? And I think that this is the reason that I still believe in this thing even though I'm skeptical, because it's like I don't understand how there can be such a prominent pattern and it all be just circumstance or just what's the word I'm looking for here? It's all just coincidence, right? And it's like if the thing just happened, then yeah, maybe coincidence. But when things are happening specifically the way you wanted it to. Like, how do you explain that? Like, for instance, I told my cousin, man, I really want a cat. I'm thinking about doing a rescue, right? I want to get a little bit older cat so that way, because like I know older cats find it's hard for them to get homes, because once you're like 6 7 years old as a cat, people might not want it because like they're not gonna be around for that much longer, right? They only get to like what 14 to 19 around there. Like I've heard older, but the older they get, the less playful and stuff. And people are weird, right? So it's like I wanted an older cat, and give it a home. And even if it's not for too long, at least it had like a good ending, right? And then just do it again. But then one day I was meditating, and I had an experience where I was speaking to something, and it asked me like the truth, like it asked for the truth, like what do you actually want when it comes to the cat? And I was like, all right, I'm being honest. I want a kitten. Like if I'm being honest, I want a kitten. I want a black female kitten. Um, and I want it now. Like I don't want to wait. I don't want to pay money at one of these places. Not because I don't want to support them, is because I just don't got that much money, right? Like I don't want to go through all these hoops and all this stuff and applying for this and applying for that and then giving everybody my information, and I just want a black female kitten now. And then it disappeared, and I went back into my like I was still in the meditation, but I was just like it was just quiet, and I just was chilling for a little bit. Came out of my meditation, went back to my normal day. Started watching a little. Um, what was it? Doesn't matter. Um, a little Tokyo Ghoul. Just going back to my normal day, right? And the next day, my cousin called me and said, "Hey, my friend has a cat." I was like, "What type?" "It's a black cat." "How many cats are there?" "There's a few." "Is there a girl?" "Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a boy, but like, do you don't want the boy?" And I was like, "No, I kind of want a girl." "Well, there is a girl, but most people want the boys." I was like, "No, I want the girl." And she was like, "All right, well, yep, there's a female black kitten." And I was like, "Oh, do I have to pay?" He was like, "It's $30, but I'll cover it for you." "Really? How soon can I get it?" Um, "I'm gonna need to pick it up, but I'll get it to you within 2 days." And I went to sleep. The next day I waited. The day after I went to, somewhere. She gave it to my brother. My brother brought it over, and I had a black female kitten. Brought it to my home, and she's awesome. She's actually, you might hear her meowing because she's in heat right now. Gotta go get her snip snip run, but she's running around here and screaming for cat dick. So yeah, but still, point is, I'm not saying that this makes it true. What I'm saying is, when I have an experience like that, what makes you think that portraying spiritual things as stupid or naive is going to convince me that it's not true? Like, what makes you think that holding up a science textbook as if it's the Bible is going to make me disbelieve my own experience, right? And there's like a thing that I like to tell atheists sometimes. It's like, all right, let's say as a joke you went to Area 51, right? Like, remember a couple of years ago there was that whole thing about storming Area 51, blah blah blah. They can't get us all, da 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 da, right? So let's say as a joke you went over there and you're gonna take a video. Maybe it's like to debunk something. I don't fucking know. Whatever. Point is, you go to Area 51 and you're by yourself, and um, it's a little dark, but there's enough light for you to see the entire area because there's lights everywhere, blah blah blah. And out of nowhere, a pig with wings flies out of Area 51, flies right over your head at a decent speed, so you're fully aware of what you're looking at. It's not moving too fast to the point that you might be making it up. It's moving relatively slowly, and you can see it fully. You can see the hair on its balls, everything. It's a big, hairy bald pig with wings flying over your head and it disappears off into the night. Is that true? You just experienced it. Is it true? Would you believe it? Yes, because it's true. You saw it with your own eyes, right? But can you prove it to anybody else? Probably not, right? But the fact that you can't prove it to anybody else, does that make it not true? Because I feel sometimes atheists want to portray it as if you can't prove this to somebody else, there's no way for you to say that it's true because this is just something you believe. But in this position, you're like, hey, but I saw it. I saw it over my head, and its hairy balls were just and it's like I saw it. Like I know I saw it. But that's the same thing that spiritual people are experiencing. We go into these visions, into these meditations, and we see things, we hear things, we experience things. There's sensations, there's feelings, there's shifts in the way you, like your weight. Like there's meditations where you can feel weightless or you can feel heavy. Like things are happening inside and outside of your body that you can't fully explain, but you know you're experiencing it. And I'm trying to draw this thing, like just to wrap up this video. If you saw that big, hairy, bald pig with wings flying over your head, and you try to tell people, yo, there's some funky stuff happening in Area 51 because I saw this thing, and nobody believed you, is there an amount of people telling you it's fake that would cause you to believe that you didn't see what you saw? And do you think it's fair for people to convince you that you hallucinated it? Right? Now, to be honest, we don't know if you hallucinated or not. But what would you actually believe, right? And I think I'm gonna leave you with that question because yeah. But like sometimes you experience things and you experience the thing, and if you just pretend it's fake because everybody else says it's fake, that's just like, what is that thing called? Ad populum? Like sometimes you just have to follow your experience, right? And the part that keeps it skepticism, is not solidifying it as an absolute. What I do know is that I saw something, I experienced something, I felt something. And what I do know is that that experience was enough to make me believe in something. I can't tell you what's true, but I can tell you what I believe. Goodbye, guys.